So in the first panel, we were talking today about small scale, about products, about new sustainable elements of building, and now we switch into the medium scale and come to architecture. Gert Kwekkeboom, he's one of the partners at Civic Architects in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. He will be talking to us today about, I may quote you, "It's already there, augmenting matter and meaning through architectural reuse." And you're specialized, if I may say so, from your projects in Tilburg that I know, in reusing not only architecture and not only building matter, but especially also in reusing atmosphere and character in the city and in architecture that already exists. You will be presenting us some projects, and I'm looking very much forward to see how you managed with also public support, with support by the public hand, to struggle those very innovative projects through. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy, and Gert, the floor, this virtual floor is yours. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you very much for having me, for inviting me for the conference. I enjoyed this morning already. Quite some elaborate, also scientifically based argumentations and analysis. As an architecture firm, we're also used to deal with the more soft side of societies, so I'll try to make a bit of a combination. I'm one of the founders of Civic Architects, a young firm. We have been existing for 5-6 years. We work from Amsterdam, and we founded the firm with this quote in mind, in the back of our minds. It's something we read while we were studying before we went our own ways and get back together later. And that's a guideline for us to work through our company and our oeuvre. And that is the relationship between society and its architecture, which is literally connected by Jos Bataille's almost century-old essay about how architectures and societies somehow relate and evolve together and influence one another. And that's a topic we have a great interest in, and we try to research and also for our design practice tackle. So we've been interested in how communities, how collaborations from the beginning of time, or from the beginning of collaboration and architectural structure, have helped us in organizing ourselves, in representing ourselves, in organizing new settlements, and what all kind of elements that need to take part in that, from churches to saloons to fire stations. So how the public architecture evolves until current times, of course. How we now invest in cultural structures, cultural institutions, financial institutions, and how architecture represents our societies or not, and how we can criticize that and how we can work with that. So our main focus in the firm is to study public building typologies by working on them and by analyzing them. And we do also a little bit of teaching and small research projects. And that goes from studying a library, a topic I will be talking about most today, to also religious buildings or infrastructural projects and exhibitions. I'm not alone there. We have a firm with four founders, 4 partners, and 6 assisting architects. So with a team of 10, we try to tackle these projects. One of the themes that we're talking about today, and which is also a line through many of our projects, and even not. That didn't even start on purpose, not purposely, but like in the meantime, we noticed that all of our projects were dealing with transformation or reuse in a way. And we've heard enough today. Like our way of consuming the world has a big impact. And one of the topics we are interested in is the way how we also treat buildings as a consumer product. Working with real estate developers, with spreadsheets in which buildings, I think they last for 50 or for the calculations maybe 50, in reality maybe 100 years. And even on the architecture scale, it's much slower, of course, than consumer goods. But even on the architecture scale, we believe it would be interesting to find out how buildings last longer, because if you don't need to dispose them, then you're being more efficient, you're being more circular. And on the highest level of complexity, maintaining things that you have is the best solution to work in a circular way, not degrading systems into lower complexities. So how buildings grow old is one of the topics we like. And we did a little bit of an exploration a while ago with some projects that are really old, to just understand what happened to these buildings and how they survived time and how they survived societies. So we built up these timelines to understand. This is the Mesquita Mosque from Cordoba. It was also in Jan Britting's lecture I saw. With a structural system that's been constructed, that's been changed, that's been occupied and taken over. And actually, this kind of life cycle, life event timeline helps us in understanding how buildings can survive, how they can last longer. This is another example of the East Hampton Town Hall in New York, where buildings, little sandbox buildings that were built all over the region, were collected and transported to form a new city hall, new town hall, with a vernacular architecture, literally transported. So we did a little bit of a research in how buildings last long, how they survive actually. And it's a thing we hope to learn from also when we build new structures, because I think that's it's a relevant topic. We learn so much discovering these old buildings with their heavy structure, with their flexibility. So for us, it's a source of inspiration. And this could be seen as an overview of things that could happen to a building if you follow their lives. To us as people, we get born, we marry, we get kids, but buildings, they are abandoned or taken over or demolished partially or juxtaposed with new elements. And for us, this is a kind of toolbox to think about how we deal with buildings and existing structures. But we also learned that there's not only a physical aspect to durability and to maintaining matter, but there's also very much a more cultural aspect to it. Because if buildings need to survive, they need to be loved, or they need to be incorporated in the common history, the common knowledge of a society or a community. And maybe it needs to be part of the rituals that have been taking place. This is, of course, a bit of an old-fashioned ritual, but still something that continues for ages and ages and ages. And that's something we try to do in our work, combining the more physical, material, durability aspects, reusing buildings in an efficient and smart way, but at the same time trying to also maintain its meaning or to build a future on the past of it. One of the projects we've been doing last years is the Lokhal Public Library in the fifth biggest city of the Netherlands. It's called Tilburg in the south. Tilburg is a late industrial city. It only grew, I think, after the 20s, last century. And it mainly grew because the main Dutch railway company built a very big workshop area there. A big place where they built locomotives, where they built carriages that were transported all over the Netherlands. And they were the main employer of this whole city. And everyone that lives in the city has relatives, has family who has been working here. So this is the kind of the hub, the motor for developing this city in the early 20th century. But obviously later when cities grew and city centers developed, the question was if it was really wise and efficient and also healthy to maintain these functions in the city. So they moved out. But then this very big industrial area, which was part of the collective memory of the inhabitants of Tilburg and all the family stories that went with them, was being redeveloped with commercial partners. So there's a new retail office and housing functions planned. But the main act the government itself organized is reusing the old locomotive maintenance and production hall, the lock hall it was called. This is one of the earlier images of when this hall was just being built. Actually, it's just a shed. It's a roof, a covered roof with mobile cranes to move and lift carriages from one side to another in the hall. And that's what's been happening in that space. And the idea was to give this building where everyone has a history back to the people with a public function, a public library. A public library, not only for reading and research, but a public library that would be a meeting place for everyone who's just interested in meeting other people, meeting different opinions, meeting different type of information and knowledge. So this is the hall, how we encountered it when it was empty. And the ambition of the municipality was to double its floor space. So there's 5,000 square meters in this space. You can imagine there's all kinds of reasons why it needs some adaptation to make it comfortable and easy to work in from acoustic point of view, from a comfort point of view, but also spatially. That was the main challenge when we started with a big team in collaboration of a heritage architect, a big textile designer, and us as a young architecture firm to redevelop this building into something that people could continue their history with in a way. So the basic strategy for the building is to weave a new public plaza in the existing structure, which is positioned here, and to find ways to fold and to bend the new functions in such a way that the big monumental atmosphere of this industrial cathedral in a way, and the spatial impact, or the impact the space has when you enter it. It's really different than when you see the photos, I promise you. So the physical atmosphere of this space, to maintain it, but also to bring it further. So a landscape of sloping areas and stepping terraces goes up, where the more quiet and reading-related functions are high up in the building, big towards the light, and where the children activities and the meeting spaces are much more on the ground floor. The result of which is a very open public plaza. It's almost an indoor square or meeting space with big steps where you can meet, where you can sit, and where you can also host events. And the higher you go, the more library-like it becomes. But the main ingredients are the entrance zone with a very big reading table on the old tracks that are still present and visible in the building. We didn't polish the existing buildings. All the marks of the use and the paint that has been there are still there. The cranes, obviously, also. And the higher you go up, you see it here, the lighter it gets, the more calm this space gets. And since the building is so big, it's really possible to have all these type of functions together in one open space without them interfering too much. So that's kind of the gift that the existing building gave us. If such a structure would nearly be built, obviously the total mass of the building would be much less. So the given building, as it was, really added to the type of library that could actually be built here, that could never have been built if it would have been a newly built structure. One of the key features positioned on the building is a glass concert hall. Obviously, not all the spaces can be as open as these entrance zones. So there's concert halls and meetings rooms. We have a bit more of a secluded atmosphere and climate, but they are positioned in such a way that the general open and airy atmosphere of this vertical playground or exploration building are still maintained. And then weaving the old and the new is obviously quite an interesting task, but with the engineers of consultancy firm Arab, we were able to position a lot of the new structure on the structural grid of the existing building, also the structural elements in the foundations that were made to make the maintenance pit, and thereby almost no new structure needed to be added. Only one secondary line on both sides to have a safety structure in case one of the other collapses, and which also enables gives a new structure where new floors can also be added in the future. So learning from this structural system, which had too big of dimensions and could actually carry more loads than were initially depicted. This new structure also adds to the future flexibility of the building. Implementing the new structure in the same rhythm as the old, finding some kind of hybrid between the old and new, not necessarily make them very different. Obviously they are different, they're from a different time, but building on the structure and the details that were already there. The new railings, which have a sturdy dimension which fits the old structure and are also manufactured in a similar way, which makes that the old atmosphere together with the new elements lives on and is not replaced, but only augmented or added up to or updated. Another more interesting cultural story is the second big industry in the city, which has been the textile industry. So half of the people, I suppose mainly the men, were working in the machine industry, and half of the people were working in the textile industry. And with such an open space, we wanted to make a building which is also adaptive and flexible towards all kinds of different uses. And together with Inside Outside, led by Petra Blaise, a textile and landscape designer, we developed 6 monumental curtains, which are movable and with which you can close off certain spaces if you have a small event or if you have a lecture, or if you have one of the users, the cultural institutions who have a closed event going on. And that enables the building to be open when nothing's happening, when everyone can just wander around, and if there's an event, these textiles can move and define spaces, and then this reading table can become a podium, a stage for dancing or theater performances, with the big staircase acting as a big auditorium, and create more intimacy in the area where the youngsters and teenage books are situated, where some hangouts were created, and have everyone give everyone the ability to find a place where they can find their intimacy, they can find their own area and be there for a while and then later move on. Obviously, the textiles are also designed to interact with the light which comes from above and which is already through the existing opaque glass surface filtered and softened, which brings an extra layer to the experience of this space. So actually like a second layer of this glass skin. And in addition, on the south side, where the new pedestrian boulevard will be executed in the near future, to develop the rest of this whole railway, this former railway maintenance area. And like the physical part is one, reusing the existing structure, the existing load-bearing systems. But on the other hand, our ambitions were also to give the community of Tilburg a new reason to be in this building every day, every week, to talk about it, to make it a communal meeting hub and meeting space. This is some Instagram pictures we regularly hatch to see what's all happening in this building, and you can see that the people really find their way in using it, from local clubs to even wedding photos, big lectures, debates, and theater plays. It's an approach we also like to continue after having done this building, and there's another project we're now working on. It's a small cultural museum, which is also very much linked to the more regional identity or character. This is the smaller city of Waalwijk, which used to be a leather manufacturing industry. Started with or farmers who started having cows and then later developed the leather industry and the shoe design industry. And this whole history of this rural to urban development of the past centuries led to the idea to invest in a new public building in the city center, which would become the new regional heritage and leather industry and shoe design museum, built on a place which actually has a lot of meaning, which is the town hall built in the 30s by an Amsterdam architect as a new focal point of this city, but is now being transformed to not act as a city hall, but act as something that really represents the history of the place itself, and not a Amsterdam-style facade, which was actually a foreign representational system that was implemented once. So a homegrown icon building on top of this, transforming this old piece of heritage, which was extended in the 80s.
Yeah, just a second. I would love to watch and listen to you for hours. Beautiful images. How many minutes to go? Just to get.
I'm trying to take it in 3 to 5 minutes max.
2 to 3 minutes max. Deal. Yeah. Thank you.
I just thought it would be nice to also see not only Lockhall, but one other thing we're working on, but it's a bit less information. But the trigger there, it's a totally different situation. It used to be an 80s town hall office. So it's an office space with corridors and doors and offices, and how to transform this into something that could be a museum. Making use of the existing structure as much as you can, not demolishing, destroying, removing too many things. Here it's much more about tinkering with the existing instead of magnifying the monumental characteristics that were already there. So by adding a new cover over a existing courtyard, we are able to transform the whole logistic system of this building, and at the same time turning it into a museum, which forms a new, the new public representational building of the city center. So this is this current courtyard, which will be covered and transformed into something that might just look like this, which is an artist's impression, obviously, and where the existing structure of this office is still there and the rhythm is still visible, but also the new meaning of the museum and the open routes through this museum, people wandering around, are implemented. Some of the existing brick will be reused to fill some of the old window openings that used to be here, and to make these big openings to make it really into a cultural place. Where the ground floor can, where on ground floor everyone can enter, enjoy the cafe, visit a learning lab, a knowledge center, and not only watch art, but also participate in its activities. Which might just end up looking something like this, where the old city hall, which was actually an alien architectural system, was replaced by a function that's really representing the past of this city, and which people can hopefully also embrace in the same way as the people in Tilburg have been doing. And then we are able to combine the more physical, but also the more social and cultural durability of communities and their buildings. Thank you very much.
Gert, thank you. It fulfills me with envy if I look at what beautiful projects you're doing and how much fun and passion you're obviously having in working with this genius loci and with saving what there already is as when it comes to character. Congratulations to that. We'll continue with this second speech. Let me just introduce you, Ying Jiang. She's one of the partners of O-Office Architects based in Guongzhou in China. And when it comes to circular strategies, I think we can do lots of effort in Austria. We can also do lots of effort in Europe. But even more important, that will be in China. When we had lunch break, I was just calculating. Austria fits into China when it comes to population. almost 160 times, and Europe fits into China 2 times. So when we're talking about circular strategies on a small, medium, and large level, I think that China is a very important market. So our office is one of the pioneers there. And one project that I wrote about many, many years ago was an old factory in Shenzhen, or near Shenzhen, I think, where you put into the old structure without renovating it, new cubicles and new boxes. And that's exactly the one picture that you can also see on the website of the Institute. That is the face of today's conference. So Ying, we are looking very much forward to seeing your projects that you've been realizing within the last years in southern China and in Pearl River Delta. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. And being an architect, I would like to share with you some project we did in South China regarding the circular strategy. And first of all, I would like to introduce a little bit the context. When we talk about PID, we all know it is the rural factory. And after decades rapid urbanization, it became a bigger and bigger urban agglomeration. And the city connected with the cities and connected with the town. How to say? And we lost the diversity and our own local tradition. Actually, this is the map of Guongzhou, the central city. Only 300-400 years ago, at that moment, we are still the city inside the mountain and the river. And we did have our own city image, and we have our own special living and working way inside the garden, and our unique architecture with its landscape. And some of them remain now. For example, this is the Kejia house, and this is the Diaolou cluster of Kaiping, but most of them was disappeared. How to say it, for the daily life, around us is kind of a single generic model. And our architecture begins from the interest of the lost history. And we try to link the hidden past and the visible future from our architecture. I will introduce, share 3 projects. One project is in Lianzhou. Lianzhou is a small city or small town located in the mountain of South China. Going from Lianzhou to other central cities like Guangzhou, Shenzhen, really like traveling through time. This town seems to belong to the past. I would like to give you a 1 minute. Lianzhou is a very special place. It's local and he has a hidden asset. The old city and his living way has relatively well preserved. Okay. Other side. It's in this perspective that the annual Lianzhou Photography Festival has been continued more than 15 years. In 2014, the general curator of the festival, Madame Duan, got a budget from the municipal government to build a permanent museum to host the professional photography exhibition. Instead of To move the new district, we, together with Madame Duan, choose to make the new museum completely built on the abandoned site of a candy factory, the former contemporary exhibition hall, this one, and this one. We demolished the part in a state of disrepair, but we keep as much as possible the material, the brick, the tires, and some materials, and the windows, of course. And we keep the warehouse, which is in a relatively good state. And the museum contains two interlocking buildings. The warehouse building we use as the small exhibition hall, enclosed by the U-shaped new building. The two buildings are linked by the sky bridge in the courtyard complex. We broke down the solid volume of the exhibition space to create a structure responding to his surrounding context of the collectivity of a small individual houses. The photography museum has since the beginning been designed to restore the urban morphology, creating dialogue with the old city. The design offered a unique experience, like a journey through urban scenery and the contemporary visual art. This is the exhibition hall 2 and the exhibition hall 5. Look at the windows and the brick we reused from the former contemporary hall. All the outdoor space around exhibition box, including the ground floor and the roof floor, are open to the public, truly realizing the encounter of the visitors and the locals. All the common area of a complex are designed as an open space to respond to the subtropical warm and humid climate and reduce the energy consumption. And the old times, the former windows we collected, and also the bricks we collected from the on-site and surrounding demolished building have carefully maintained and reconstructed to create the new building. Look at the time or the new facade. And we engage both modern construction and local craftsmanship, carry on the material and non-material memory of the city and the street contradiction. In and out of the museum, in addition to the formal art event, houses in the professional exhibition hall, various informal public conference and events are also held on the ground open space. And actually, we hope architecture could maintain the city's heritage, both materially and spiritually. The second and the third project I would like to share with you actually is in the same place. It's in Shenzhen, abandoned factory once again. Shenzhen is the fastest developer city in China. Throughout the 80s, hundreds of factories were built in Shenzhen, the then newly established special economic zone. This manufacturing-based industry formed the economic foundation for the city. But by the early 2000s, Shenzhen started to shift from a production to a service economy. Many similar industries either shut down or reclosed. Honghua Dining Factory was one of them. It closed in operation in 2003 and diminishing its workers, factory space were left vacant like this. And I will invite you for. It's the first time when we arrived at the site, we found that it's really, how to say, a surprise because the subtropical vegetation have already took over the abandoned site, abandoned compound. And we convinced the client that rather than the renting office, the first move should be to create an art commune. Therefore, the first project we got from this site was to transform 3 buildings as a gallery, museum, and youth hotel. Considering the very tight budget of the project, we try to minimize the new intervention and maintain the history of the site. All new built contents are carefully implanted into the existing building envelope to create a new multi-layer spatial and time logic into the industry relic, redefining the indoor and outdoor relation. It's also of an ecological response to the local tropical climate. Materials and construction technicals applied in the project are not aliens to the existing building envelope. And second step, we transformed the formal workshop as the art museum and the former 2 workers' dormitory building as the youth hotel. This is the dormitory room in 1990s, and it looked like that in 2003. Look at this door with windows. Actually, it's the typical style at that moment, but we can never see now. In the design for youth hotel, we use Isaac Gallery's material language of a black clad volume, but rotated to the elevation that playful mark the space and rose on original dormitory facade. The ground floor of the hotel held the check-in and lounging and a large self-help kitchen, as well as the communal dining and meeting space. This is the corridor, once again with the door and the windows. And for the art museum was designed within the concrete factory building shell. It was the largest space of all the buildings on site. Instead of renovating the whole building, we considered the new architectonic should be independently implanted on the original inner ground of the old workshop, which was regarded as a large open concrete pavilion. The ground floor opened in all directions to the public, as well as to the surrounding nature landscape. The inner core space of the museum is the main exhibition hall. The 2-story gallery space organized in plan and section by a single continuous viewing route. Along the circulation are the ramps, exhibitions area, meeting space, and the open auditorium. The final turn could turn you back to the ground floor with the view of wily greenery outside. Actually, these 3 projects create a new intersection that are simultaneously in a stark contrast with the existing industry complex, while the youth hotel adopted a different design strategy due to the program of collective housing. The design for art museum and Isaac Gallery take the original factory building as an existing no vegetal landscape condition. In most places, the new insertion don't even touch the original structure, yet the factory wall, ceiling, and floors are all appropriated as an intermediary layer between the new volume and the landscape beyond the buildings. After the completion of these start art projects, the place attracts numerous design offices, photo studios, and as well as the museum and performance studios. The on-site small industry and creative workshops have created a community that is more and more close to the idea of art commune as the beginning. Just around 1 and 2 years after the completion of IT Town projects, Ming the academic decided to transform the part of IT Town to their new campus. We renovated in total around 8 buildings. And actually the idea of a new campus for the teenagers to study and live together in this beautiful urban enclave is astonishing yet challenging. The same as IT Town, instead of trying to erase the imprint of the old factory in a rush to modernization, we maintain the identity and the contrast of the new and the old, and keep as much of the fabric of the old and carefully create the new spatial continuity. Our focus of constructing the spatial narrative on campus was placed on the relationship between the buildings and the surrounding geographic. Construction strategy, materials, and tectonics are designed according to the geographic feature, construction methods, and the relationship to the surrounding of each individual building. And this is the classroom. And what would I, like to say finally is reusing and re-inhabiting the old industry heritage has recently a worldwide discourse in urban development. In China, with rapid urbanization, it's still a new trend, but become more and more urgent when the industry is moving out from the cities. Many of the former industry sites was transformed to the office or the commercial use. However, what we see here, reconversion in general becomes only new facade plus interior renovation. From all above examples, what I would like to say is want to show another possibility, another digression, how reusing layers new possibility on top of the past. Thank you.
谢谢你，很漂亮的房子。Thank you, Ying.
谢谢 Thank you.
So after China, we will come back again to Europe. Muck Petzet, are you here with us? Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Perfect. So let me introduce Muck Petzet to you. Lives and works in Munich and Berlin, architect, and the last days were trying to get in touch with you, but you were very busy in teaching at the Academia in Mendrisio. So this is also something that you do. And you will be talking to us about lifecycle management on a meta level, about extending life cycles, and also what we can do in order, like we saw now in the first 2 projects, not to destroy and build new, but how we can repair structures in future times. Muck, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you also for my colleagues. I knew that there would be lots of beautiful transformation projects or reuse projects. So thank you, Gert and Ying, for sharing these with us. So I can show 2 super unsuccessful transformation projects. Maybe we can learn from that, and let's say a successful new building, which hopefully is also a contribution to this talk about circular building. This is for me a little bit my provocative image here to this topic, because I constantly had to change my presentation during this day, which was very interesting. I think it's very good what has been said also this morning, but I have really the feeling that somehow we should not talk about this circular strategy so much, because I think We all know that this, for example, this image is a total lie. It's not possible. We know that this is in fact something like that. Also, some of the schemes we've seen today show that, but still we talk about circular, and we know that it's not possible. And then we have all these dreams about cradle to cradle, and we have these beautiful ideas about reusing steel structures, and it was really super impressive. But when I did this exhibition, Reduce, Reuse, Recycle, the German Pavilion, 2012, I was desperately looking for recycling projects, and they're nearly not existent. And also, what the colleague from EPFL didn't mention is that we naturally have a huge problem in storing these building parts, making them, let's say, who would store all these building parts for the case that maybe someone would need them. We have to transport them. And so I think even this cradle to cradle, this buildings cannot be recycled. This is my provocative theory here. They can just be reused. And this is kind of a little bit like the lie of recycling. We all know that it's a lie, that other dirty processes are happening, and you can imagine that it's nearly impossible. And actually, you can recycle some parts, but we all know that this is not good. And so this real circle is somehow, also the colleague from EPFL showed this in his own scheme. I nearly stole it from him, that this circle is not like that we have this huge circle here. We have just around, let's say, the existing, we have some possibilities, because the energy is lost inside these buildings. It's kind of an end point for me. I'm really have to say, because I'm talking about Reduce, Reuse, Recycle since a long time, and look at this new energy law which comes now into effect in Germany, according to the newest European regulations. And there's no word about grey energy in it. Nothing. Nada. It's just going on with this consumption energy efficiency. There's nothing. So I think it's great why we talk about circular strategies, just to make sure that maybe someone will sometimes grasp this idea that there is another form of energy, which we all know, this grey energy. We know from this. All we've been talking about is right today, but unfortunately, it's like climate change, climate emergency, you could say. Also, this is totally clear, and still there's no reaction to it. And so this is why I'm also provoking, saying we should not talk about circular strategies, because it should be clear that buildings are just an energy and resource dump. And we have to deal with it, and we cannot pretend this is super dangerous, because this morning we talked about laws, and I think it's super dangerous when we give this impression that there's another way, we can recycle everything, we can make everything circular. This is dangerous, because this opens the mind to the politicians. Oh yeah, if we just do the right technology, we will solve it. But it's not true. Just showing this schemes about grey energy, you all know that. And what is also very dangerous is that grey energy, how it's calculated, even when we are let's say, scientists, and we calculate it. Also, at the moment, grey energy is written off after a certain time, let's say 60 years, 90 years. Theoretically, you can tear down the building. You're still good. And this is also a scientific lie, which is at the moment still, let's say, the theory. And I tried to show that 2013 in calculating this building, which was my first calculation, so it's totally unscientific somehow. We also made a demonstration against that this is going to be torn down. It might even be saved. It's still standing until today. But I showed that the energy of use for 25 years if you look at it, what kind of efforts you have to put in into this kind of tearing it down and rebuilding it, which is the last column, it always is less good than modernization. And if you look at the CO2 footprint of because you have two different qualities of energy, one, the very dirty fossil energy, which is coming into building process, demolition processes and all that. And then we have this energy for heating, which is in this case district heating. We see that the CO2 footprint is something totally different. So it would be even better to leave the building like it is than tearing it down and rebuilding it. So as I was saying, since 2012, I did this exhibition, Reduce, Reuse, Recycle. We've talked about it, but unfortunately, this truth will not kind of be heard because, as also my colleague said, we have a building industry, we have architects that want to build, we have clients that want to build. Everybody wants to have beautiful new stuff. We are used to that it's no problem. And so this truth, which is the waste pyramid, that prevention is the best thing, which is totally clear, scientifically proven. We also talked about it this morning. This truth doesn't hold. So I again have to repeat that the first and the second options, reduce and reuse, is avoidance of the unnecessary use of the existing, extending life cycles, and then also, if we work with the existing, the most minimal intervention. And we have seen beautiful examples of that. But just to show some unsuccessful examples, this was really, I was thinking this is really a genius idea. We had this competition to build a new community housing project, kind of ambitious new forms of living and all this stuff, what you want as an architect. And it was in Kassel, so a very progressive town. But we found out that the site, which is this the circle, the site for this project, actually there was something on it. There was a school on it, which was naturally in the mind of the city and of this of all the colleagues. This was just gone. It's an empty spot. It's not existing, and we showed that it's absolutely possible with this existing structure to build exactly what they wanted, and a super experimental community building, which has new kinds of kind of communal spaces in the middle, and then have this individual space all around. You have this generosity of this existing structure. We've shown in beautiful images how easy it would be to keep everything, and how it would be exactly what they wanted. But still, naturally, we were kicked out of the competition, and it's since long this building is gone. So this is reality. And so I understand this colleague of mine, Daniel Furop, that he says you have to not allow anymore to build. And I would say what the discussion of this morning was very interesting, that in the end you were talking about laws. And there has to be a law that prohibits such a crazy, wasteful demolition. There has to be a law. There's no other way. And this is why it's so dangerous to talk about all this circular stuff, circular, because it pretends, and this is very interesting, how these images are strong, this circular. For example, Kate Raworth with her donut economics, she showed that how these images are so important, and how they form, especially also the mind of politicians of the society. And we have to find ways, this is before the discussion of tomorrow, I wrote this, that we have to compensate for these demolitions if we do them. And put this money towards this project that transform. And this is the only way that I think can save us somehow. Because this is the last option, how to improve the life cycle of new buildings. We all talked about it already, low impact materials, reduction of materials. Recycling materials, for me, is a big, big question mark. I think it's also dangerous, because Germany wants to be the world champion of recycling, but recycling, we know, it takes a lot of energy. For example, recycling concrete is just, in some studies, maybe 3% better from the CO2 footprint than concrete with natural aggregates, because of the transportation and the energy you put into crushing the concrete. So recycling is very dangerous also as a possibility, because it lets us consume with good conscience. So I think adequacy means lifespan, super important, longevity, durability, persistence, integrated low tech. Also the things that architects were presenting today, this integration of these low tech systems that are long lasting, because we know our technical systems at the moment, they are outdated at the moment when they build them into the building. They're already outdated, and after 5 years, maybe the software is not done anymore, and you can throw them away. So I think that's really crucial. Flexibility, reusability. What's very, very important, enabling different users with a certain, let's say, neutrality and generosity. We talked about that. Design, stylistic, longevity, maintainability, repairability, and this kind of pre-cycling, that's absolutely good. What we talked this morning, that if you build, you're responsible for what you build in. That's crucial. Also, that should be absolutely, I'm with the colleague Annette Hildebrand, that should be the law. You have to be responsible. Also, we architects are anyway responsible for anything what you can imagine. But we also, unfortunately, the client has to be responsible for what he brings, like a company producing a computer, what they bring into the world. So another very short, unsuccessful project. What we did, another one of these typical moments, a client comes to us, says, I want to have a new house. And you look at the site, there is already a house on it. What do you do? And we found out, we tried to convince the client to rebuild this house. And we found out that it's not possible because the very foundations were rotten. So we could not really, and then we convinced the client to at least build something completely out of wood, massive wood, as a CO2 storage. We talked about a little bit today. At least create something like a little bit a positive, you could say, impact. And it's a very low-tech energy supply, as you can see here, built by the client. And it's really only massive wood, not treated, no glue inside. So we had not, but you see, like architects said, no building with garage, there's a garage inside. So it's also something of a crime, this building. But I said it's unsuccessful. Just to finish up, one, I think, more successful new building, which is about also this life cycle. And this is naturally designed from Brandelhuber Plus and the Burlon, where we work together. And also, as architect said, it was kind of a research on flexibility. It was really building as a research. And this is where always the means, which I say would be included in this building. You could say it's a very bad building, seeing of the CO2 footprint. It's built out of massive concrete, so not at all low impact materials. But it has all these possibilities, this adaptability to different users. There are 20 different users now inside, and this neutrality and openness. The clearly distinction between lasting and exchangeable parts. And as you can see here, lots of things are exchangeable. Very, very few parts are fixed. We have this super durable robustness, heavy duty materials. We have to say proven construction is a bit critical because we have also the terraces only out of concrete. So it was a bit experimental building, but a very careful execution. Repairability, maintainability, exchangeability, everything we mentioned a little bit today. Even this what you see here is the insulation. Yeah, I know. I'm really nearly finished, and I just needed 15 minutes. So you can even exchange the insulation because it's added where it's needed, and naturally the installations and everything. And that's just my closing point. And if we really build new, I think I would not prohibit building, because we need also new exciting buildings. Then we have to be very, very conscious what we're doing, and this is also what our colleagues said. Enabling the users and future users is kind of super crucial. Let's say letting this software its freedom, the software of the user, and creating this generosity where everything is possible. Thank you very much.
Muck, thank you very much. Thank you for sharing. After, as you said, some unsuccessful projects, also some successful projects, and last one, very beautiful one. We now come to the discussion, and I may ask Bernhard Sommer, who will be, with us as a respondent today. He's architect, he's energy consultant, and he's also assistant here at the University of Applied Arts in Vienna. And so all of you joining in. Bernhard, I would like to start with you. We heard now 3 different approaches from Austria, from Netherlands, and from China on what you can do with existing material. We heard Muck say, is the circle a lie? What would your answer be on that question?
My answer would be he's for sure right. I was stuck a bit in this discussion about getting a law. I think a law regarding recycling reuse is already there. We have the EU Directive 305, and all through Europe, this is in place. If you ever build something in Austria, then you know about these OIB guidelines. And there are 6 guidelines, but there should be 7, because by European law, the 7th guideline is the guideline about sustainable use of natural resources. And this is in place since 2011. So we don't have a problem with regulation regarding recyclability, durability, and the ecology of rough materials. This is actually there, but it's not implemented. Actually, I think you would win every lawsuit if you would claim this as a client, for instance. Mm-hmm. So this we have. Very interesting, if we are about the discussion about laws, is to prohibit new buildings. Yeah? So this is what Muck said is a very interesting approach, because probably that would be a very big contribution. Yeah? And that what we saw with Jiang's office in China. So this is probably the biggest contribution that you can do to mm-hmm. activate already existing structures, as was said. You don't have to.
When we talk about prohibiting new buildings, I would immediately like to start and to include with a question that we have from Florian Kogler, because he's tuning in with exactly that topic. So Bernhard, Ying, Muck, and Gert, whoever would like to start. The question is, how will architecture and style evolve if we prohibit building new things? So that's exactly the question. Should we switch to virtual design, or is it responsible to force the human of the future to live in an outdated framework? And the question is, what is an outdated framework? So Gert, Muck, Ying, who would like to start?
If I am loud because I had this provocative thought, right. I would rather say not prohibiting building. You've seen also a new building which is quite successful, I would say, but prohibiting demolition. And if you can get rid of the old, you have to deal with it. And this would be for me much more make more sense. And then the style, it's not a style question, it's a question of attitude. If you like our colleagues here, Ying and Gert, if you kind of have this love towards this existing and this kind of affirmative attitude, there will always be a very interesting architecture coming out of this. This kind of having this other part which you have to deal with, this existing, and this generosity which we artificially generated in this terrace house is often created by unfitting, like also Ying showed in her museum. It's much too big, and you create this generosity which makes it also again super flexible for later use. And you create something so more interesting than just a style.
Sorry for interrupting. I have to keep the time in mind. Ying, I would like to continue with you. This question by Florian: can we force the human of the future to live in an outdated framework? Would you understand it the same way?
I have a feeling that actually we face really different context. The problematic here is really different from what you're talking about. I'm sorry to tell you that, because how to explain? At least in South China, everything keeps changing. Design mission and the design purpose. I mean, the mission we get at the beginning is like that. Maybe it changed after 1 or 2 months. That means it's difficult to make a fix and well plan it. So to answer your question, of course, I believe. And otherwise, we did not solve all these problems, all this changement. So I believe for the human being, we should find really some solution or possibility to deal with the new problematic in the future without changing all the things. Because here already, at least in my town, changing is too much, too quickly, and it's too huge. So normally we should keep what we have and then think about the new solution, new strategy. I don't know if I explain well or not. Sometimes it's not only about the sustainable design. It's not only about the recycle. It's about here for me, what I have to deal with every day is the changing, and also the uncertain. I mean the uncertain situation in the few or very soon future. In that way, what can I do is to keep it as much as possible what we have and to make it in a new way. And another thing I would like to say is I had studied in France. When I come back to China, I was so sad because I found here it's already a town with 2,000 years history, but you could never feel it because everything was demolished, everything would disappear. So for me, I really need to find the hidden past. I feel some of it is somewhere, and I need to relink this to this new future. So reuse the old material, reuse the existing structure, reuse the the existing envelope or landscape. It's a way that for me not only about material, it links to kind of a spiritual.
Thank you. Gert, if I may continue with you. Florian, who asked the question, was talking about forcing human beings to live in old structures. And Ying just said finding the hidden past in old structures. So where do you see the truth?
Yeah. I'm not entirely sure if it's about hidden paths in our work, but in general, we really like the idea that buildings outlive humans. Buildings they stand for around 100 years if you do it properly, and humans still live a bit shorter. So somehow buildings survive generations, and I think it's also valuable. It's also something to strive for. So it's not necessarily outdated. It is continuity instead of replacing things. So I really believe that actually buildings as collective memory, I would say, not necessarily hidden rituals, but as collective memory, are relevant and never outdated. I think it's actually the danger, the opposite is more dangerous, to think that you need to replace everything. I was educated 10 to 15 years ago with the super Dutch generation being born and being scattered all over the world, which was only about innovation and the new. And I think the new generation of at least the Dutch architects really also values that what does not change. The human condition also doesn't change as fast. And we still breathe, we walk, we have needs that continue, and I think architecture plays a role in that. And by bringing in this collective memory, we also know our pasts, and I think it's valuable. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I would like to ask you one thing, because I was observing now different approaches in your speeches, as I'm also observing architecture scene throughout Europe and the world. When we look at Netherlands and at China, there we see a very sensual approach to old architecture, to old structures. It's an emotional, it's an aesthetic approach, something that touches us in our hearts. When I see how we talk about sustainability and about circular strategies in Austria, in Germany, and in Switzerland, very often it's not sensual, but very intellectual. So you have emotions on one hand and the intellect on the other hand. What is the better tool in order to achieve circular strategies in building? Heart or brain?
Without love, it's nothing. You have to start with affection for this existing. And this is the best starting point, and you have to find your love for it, because if you're just intellectually dealing with it, there, as Ying said, there are much more resources in an existing building than materials or energies. There are social resources, there's history, there's all this stuff that we also want to achieve with architecture. And in a new building, it's so difficult, and together with an old one, it's possible.
Thank you. May I also ask Bernhard and maybe Ying for a short statement?
Yeah, architecture is a cultural task, first place. Yeah, it's also a bit dangerous to discuss it just in a technological framework. So, of course, it's an emotional. Maybe it's also the answer for the question about the outdated environments. Yeah, that's already the answer. Architecture can never be outdated if it's taken seriously, because if it's successful, it's also emotionally successful.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. We have another question by Andrea Kostrovsky concerning the circular approach. In terms of CO2 release, how will the construction sector stay within an acceptable frame of emission? And what measures are important apart from recycling materials? So talking about recycling materials is one thing. What else? Who would like to start?
I can start. Sorry. No. You. Bernhard, you're on.
Yeah, there are so many things to say. I mean, starting from the operation energy, the CO2 release we are slowly bringing down by all the insulation measures. And every solution you bring brings new problems. No? Like if you look into the material question. So how will it stay within an acceptable frame? So maybe opposing maybe many others here, I'm very optimistic that we can make that. I think we are also not on the worst track you can imagine. I think it's true we have to replace certain materials. Certain materials shouldn't pop up anymore. It's true we have to take, for instance, this EU directive seriously and not build anything into a building which cannot be recycled or upcycled or reused. Yeah, this is all true, but it's also not impossible. And when I stepped in to the provocative saying of the prohibiting new buildings, this is the danger with provocation is that it's taken too seriously. Of course, we will have new buildings. If you think of a city, then a building is an element of a city. Of course, you have to bring in new elements. Also, if you want to continue using a building, you've seen the beautiful examples, you bring in new elements. So this never stays, this never can be seen black and white.
Okay, thank you, Gert. Can I continue with you? Let's really get more specific into the detail. How the construction sector will be able to stay within an acceptable frame of emission? What ideas do you have?
Well, here in the Netherlands, it also relates to building culture. Huh? And our construction culture is one of concrete construction works. And many architects here in the Netherlands are trying to tackle that topic. So how a culture or ritual that's embedded in the big corporate construction companies, how that could shift towards a more CO2 friendly approach. For instance, by rethinking building in massive wood, what Austrians and Germans know already. We've seen an example by Muck, know much more about. So in terms of the Netherlands, it's the challenge that's the main problem with construction works, is the challenge to shift from a concrete-based building culture, construction culture, towards a more biodegradable or wood-based construction culture. That's, I think, if you talk in big numbers, the main challenge we're facing in the Dutch construction industry.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Ying, may I ask you, you were showing us very unusual approaches of how to deal with old structures. Who is the initiator in your projects? Is it the so who is the one that wishes that kind of project? Is it you? So is it all office architects that starts with that? Is it your client? Is it a private client? Is it a public client? So who is responsible to start such a project?
How to say that actually it's nearly impossible to do that in the public project, because we have to deal with a very strictly rule and very heavy control. So most of this kind of project was the design for the private client. But as you know, for the private client, you need to convince them. At the beginning, they just give us a budget and then what they expected. But they will not tell you what kind of building he is waiting for. So normally we need to really convince them to transform a little bit the design mission. And of course, there are so many difficulties, but one thing best here is, once again, the change. And also, we have to benefit some kind of the special thing to convince the client. For example, the implantation. We use many times in Architectonic project. Why the client accept that kind of a strategy? Just because of the budget. It's really good to reduce the budget and concentrate all the construction. This is for him, it's a good thing. Of course, for architect, we don't focus to deal with the, it's not the most important thing for us, but at the same time, we really need to translate it, what we did, and to make the client understand. And I have already explained why we did this in plantation. It's good to we have a much more possibility to reuse the building. And at the beginning, the client did not believe it, but it's really a low budget that he is happy to make us to try for the first small project, and then he step by step he believed that would be a very interesting things, and then we have a chance to do more and more and more.
Before coming to an end, because we will be already running out of time again, I would like to include one more, I think, important topic, and whoever would like to answer, please make it short. So far, we're talking about construction, renovation, and reuse. What about running the building? So, about using the building. Is there also an innovative approach in how can we prolong a good, sustainable running of a building for many, many, many years, 50, 70, 100 years? Is there any idea? Talk about energy storage when we talk about reducing energy costs and so on.
I think however it's pronounced architects, they showed some very good solutions, and it's kind of really about integrating, let's say, the climate design in the very building, because we know that the life cycle of technological solutions is very, very short. And with this integration, we make it possible that it can last much, much longer, as long as the building lasts.
Thank you, Bernhard. I think you're working currently on some storage mesh or buffer strategies.
That's already.
We're talking about dynamic storage, whatever that is. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I think the storage question is the key to the energy question, because actually there's enough energy around us, enough energy heating the earth, but the difficulty with all the renewables is to store it. And yeah, one way is, of course, to make the building itself a system, as we've seen today. Depending on the possibilities you have, especially in given buildings, in old buildings, we were working on a way to distribute thermal mass dynamically throughout the building.
Dynamically means what exactly?
Pump it around. So we are not hostile to technology. We love sensors, and we love little motors and microcontrollers, and we can work with that. Of course, it's important that these things are robust, but it's not always. If you can make a solution that runs with 100 years or 1,000 years, is great. But it also becomes a theological question, I think, from a certain time. From a certain point, I think it's not necessary that everything is running forever.
Thank you. So in this topic, we have a really huge range from almost moving into a ruin, like we saw in the Shenzhen project, to a high-tech solution where you start to pump storage mass and water with sensors throughout the building. For the final round, I have a conclusion question, and to all four of you. And I would like you to think of the most ugly building in your town, in your city. So what is the most horrible building? it can be a residential building, it can be a factory, an office tower, a ruin, something completely newly built. So think about, very personally, about the most ugly building in your city. My question is, what is that building? And what would you do with it if you got the contract to reuse it and to renew it and do something new out of it?
Okay.
That's a tough one, Wojciech, but I think I'll just start with...
Go ahead. So what would your building...
To mind at first, that's always a good hunch, but during the last crisis, a new residential tower was built on a very prominent place in Amsterdam along the Eye River. And because of the need of the government to really sell the plot, during the crisis, a very cheap and badly made building was done, which is now, it's not the ugliest building, but it's the worst building in a way, because it has now future value, if I would exaggerate, in the city's skyline, in the urban environment, and the plinth is not working. It's a parking garage because there was no money to do the parking on the ground. So redoing that whole plinth in the parking garage to generate a lively urban environment would be my solution. I think I'll stick to that for now. That would be my first hunch.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we will get a new urban environment in Amsterdam. Who would like to continue? Most ugly building in Germany, Austria, and China.
I could.
Bernhard.
Ying, wanted to continue? You wanted to continue? No. It's a tough question because also diplomatically difficult.
Nobody's listening.
But no, but it doesn't matter. But probably it would be some residential building. But I have we had a very nice student seminar work 2 years ago in the energy design seminar about the Franz Josefs Bahnhof. You remember that? Also the Alterngründe.
Yeah.
And it has some kind of ugliness, I would say. Yeah, it's not. You can justify it also, but it has some kind of ugliness. And
what would you like to do with it?
I would like to do what the students did. I would like to put some robots inside, and they would continuously disassemble the building and reassemble it to new needs.
Thank you. So Bernhard would like to make robots deconstruct a train station in Vienna. Yeah. Thank you. Ying.
Can I? It's my turn.
Yes.
Okay. Actually, there are so many terrible. I will not say ugly. I will say terrible building in South China, and that is the building for me. Is the building want to represent the power, no matter the power of the political issue or the power of the capital. I made me clear, and I hate this kind of a building. If I have a possibility to retransform it, first I will take away his envelope, no matter what kind of a curtain wall, and then I will put the garden inside. Take away all the decoration, all the X, all the symbol of the power, and then put a lot of garden inside and break down the volume. And finally, I will insert the box with a different kind of a function for the new use. Yeah.
Thank you. So power buildings, political and capitalistic power will become green gardens in southern China. Muck.
Yeah, it's really very tricky. I could disguise it because I'm in 2 cities, but still, for me, the most ugly idea is to tear down this building, which I mentioned. It's really so crazy that I'm still hoping that it will be transformed. It might be possible, there was a reuse idea of for 5 years. So this is for me the thing at the moment, to prevent this stupidity of going on, of tearing down buildings totally senselessly. So that's for me ugliness. That's really ugly.
That's the more harmonic approach, to stay with the ugliness and to just leave it away.
Yes.
And to let it be. That's also a solution. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us in. That was panel number 2, talking about a medium scale, about the reuse of buildings. And you heard, I think, many convincing and also beautiful approaches from different countries, from different people.